And then I ended up booking a modeling gig for Febreze was my first job. I modeled for
Wow.
Febreze.com. That's when I started getting on sets and going, okay, this is what it looks like. So obviously, when The Chosen is over, he's going to have more shows and movies and all these things coming. And there's probably more opportunities for me to step into a bigger role.
Do you ever get a project that you're on and you've committed to, and then you go through the scripts and stuff, and you're like, I'm not so sure about this one?
Yes. I remember sending out Kendricks an email and saying, I want to work on your movie or whatever. And he actually responded and said,
without further ado, I don't want to waste any of your time. I don't want to waste any of Adam's time. So let's jump in and welcome Adam Drake to the stream. And let me give a small intro before we bring him in. Adam Drake, of course, is the assistant director on The Chosen. That's what we know him best for. But as a Trevecca grad and a old school family vlogger, as well as an Emmy Award winner, there's a lot that we don't know about Adam Drake. And so tonight we're going to be diving deep into his past and what he's done and his interest in film and his career. And we're going to get into some of the nitty gritty of all of that. So without further ado, welcome Adam Drake. Here we go.
Hello. Hey, thanks for having me, Brandon.
Awesome. Well, welcome, man. I'm so glad you're here. I'm really excited to dive into some of this stuff because I think a lot of people obviously know you from The Chosen, but I think there's a lot more to your career and your life beyond that. Not to mention your family. You've got 5 kids and a wife, of course, and a bunch of stuff beyond that. So I want to dive deep into who you are as a person. And let me start off with this. And this is for my audience. Generally, we don't do a lot of interviews, right? Unless we're on set with The Chosen, we happen to have like a cast interview set up or something like that. There's not a lot of stuff that we do with interviews throughout The Chosen or throughout other projects. And there's specific reasons for that because generally it doesn't often align with what I want to make as videos, right? But I've gotten to know you over the last several months, and your heart for faith and for film and for ministry and everything outside of just being a filmmaker has been really, really cool to see. That being said, I'd love to talk about who you are, where you come from, and kind of all of that. So let's start kind of at the beginning, before The Chosen, before your film career, before everything. Where did you kind of grow up? What was your life kind of like growing up? And then we'll get into some of the other stuff a bit later, but I want to kind of start there if we can.
Well, first of all, thanks, man. Thank you for, I feel special since you don't have people on the show.
Hey, I'm butting in here really quickly because at the beginning of this interview, we had some issues with the echo and the audio. So don't worry about that. I'm going to punch into a later part in the episode where we fix it. It only lasted a couple minutes. Basically, what Adam said at the very beginning is that he grew up in a Nazarene church that didn't actually allow you to go to the movies during the time. And so he didn't have any kind of interest in doing that at all when he was growing up. And so he thought that was a funny kind of thing where he ends up obviously being a major movie guy, being in film now. But early on, he wasn't able to because of his church and different things like that. But anyway, that was just the very beginning of this. So we're going to punch into the actual interview. Here we go.
So I actually I wasn't interested in movies and making movies when I was young. Like most people in the business they know it from the very beginning, right? For me, basketball was my life. I lived for basketball. And so I played basketball through high school and then went and played in college as well. And played at a school in Kentucky, and then ended up transferring into back to Nashville to go to Trevecca Nazarene University, where I ended up graduating. I played basketball there. So
Okay.
about my junior year though of college, I was like, man, I have no idea what I want to do with my life. Like I'm not going to the NBA, which is all what I always dreamed of and wanted to do. I'm not going to make it. So there's got to be something else. And I had no other passions. Like that was it. And somehow I stumbled on like it was in one of those malls where you can go and apply to be a model and an actor, and most of the time it's like a scam. And,
Right. I'd be terrified.
But that, yeah. But I went and did this thing, and I went and auditioned for this, and ended up picking up several. This was in Nashville. I was going to school in Nashville at Trevecca. And ended up going to several of these like events, and then where there was lots of agents, and ended up picking up agents. And then I ended up booking a modeling gig for Febreze was my first job. I modeled for Febreze.com. I was in their magazine, and I was in their magazines, and then like on their website and all that stuff. And it was like I went and took like a day of pictures, and then there was like a day of travel, and they paid me so well, and it was, and then I was getting paid consistently for all the ad stuff. So I was like, this is awesome. That was my first
Yeah,
gig.
that's cool.
So that, yeah, then being in Nashville, so I started getting auditions, and there's lots of music videos. There's not a lot of movies that shoot in Nashville, but a lot of music videos. So I started getting on music videos, and the first time I walked on to like a set, I just absolutely fell in love, and had the passion that I'd always had for basketball was just transferred over. And during this time, the Lord's just building my testimony throughout this too. I was just in that kind of like a couple weeks period in on campus, in college, going, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Like, what would you have me do, basically? And the Lord just made it so clear and just gave me this instant passion for the film business. And then that's when I started getting on sets and going, okay, this is what it looks like. This is what it does. And then instantly having the passion too to go, I want to make my own stuff. I don't want to just act. I want to make my own content. So that was the start of it in college, which for most people that are in the film business, that's kind of a late bloomer. Most people are like, they were making movies when they were a kid, with a little camera.
Right, right.
Um, yeah. So Trevecca didn't have any kind of film program, and there was a one semester school you could go to. It was called Los Angeles Film Studies Center in LA. So, and so because I was playing basketball though, I couldn't, you're supposed to go in like your sophomore or junior year. Plus I was late. So I ended up talking both schools into letting me go after I graduated. So I did all 4 years, played
Okay.
ball. And then I went out there an extra semester basically. And it's a one semester school where they teach you how to shoot and edit and do all of this stuff. And I got married right before I left. And so my wife went with me. It was just the two of us out there in LA, and she's from small town country Tennessee too. So that was a new world for us going to LA, and we both hated it and wanted nothing to do with it. So we came back to, but I knew that I was still called into the business, and so I just came back to Nashville and started pursuing like a local work, like music videos and
Right.
things like that. So it kind of started out with, I kind of started my own business for a little bit. I had a lot of gear. I had a camera. I was shooting a lot of my own stuff. I did lots of live events, shot lots of concerts, music videos, industrial videos, like safety stuff. Kind of had my own business for a while. And then I was presented with an opportunity to work on camera on my first film, on my first movie. And that was 2010, I think, 2010, 2011. And I was the first AC, which is the first assistant camera. So the guy who pulls focus and is next to the camera kind of handles everything camera. So I'm
Yeah.
not shooting the film, but I handle all the digital stuff, which I knew a lot about because that's what I've been doing, camera stuff. And so that was my first one, and then um,
This
I
is
got
in
another one.
Tennessee or in LA?
So that was in Tennessee. Yeah, that was in Nashville.
Okay.
That first
Okay.
film I did. It was a real low budget film. I don't even know if you could find it on a DVD these days, like in 2010. It
Okay.
was called, the movie was called Decision, and yeah, I don't even know if you could, maybe you could find a DVD on Amazon, but
Okay.
yeah. And then so I did a couple of those. I kind of, that led to a couple other like films, working in the camera department, and never knew I wanted to be an assistant director. Definitely, like most people in the business, I want to write, direct my own things. Um, and so I directed. At this point, I had directed a lot of live stuff, a lot of music videos, and so I kind of had been directing and producing my own stuff. And then there was a film called My Name Is Paul that was shooting in North Carolina, and it was kind of like, it
Okay.
was basically like the Kendrick brothers, like somebody, they were inspired by the Kendrick brothers. They were a church. They're like, we want to do what the Kendricks are doing. We want to make a
Mm.
film through our church and have like 5 or 6 crew members that are professionals, and then everybody else is volunteers, which is what the Kendricks do. And so somehow I got connected with them, through some people I'd been working with, and they wanted to bring me on, and I would be one of the professionals, even though, I mean, I knew quite a bit, but I didn't know that much. I mean, I worked on sets, and they're all a lot of them are volunteers. They wanted to bring me on as their line producer and first AD. I never first AD'd. Definitely never line produced, but
Right.
I knew how to run a set. I knew how things run because I shot a lot of things myself, where I was just doing it all myself anyway.
Right.
So yeah, so they brought me on, and that was my actual. So most, like for instance, Mitch, who works for me, and a lot, and Sam Jenkins, and all the Brosen guys that work with me, they've all worked their way up the ladder, right? They started out as a
Right.
PA, key set PA, second, then the second. You're kind of working your way up the ladder. I was very blessed to where I was thrown right at the top, which can be bad and good, but I was thrown right at the top at the very beginning. But it went really well. So I did that movie, and it went really well. And of course, I learned a ton. But as soon as that movie was over, there was a producer on that film that was going to do another one a month later. And it was like,
Mm.
"Hey, you're a great first AD. How long you been doing this?" And I said, "Well, long enough," because it's the first one. And he brought me on, and so then I went and did the next one, and then it just kept going from there, and then it just
Yeah.
kept growing, and I kept doing more and doing more films. So, yeah.
Okay, let's pause there for a second. I want to go back and talk about outside of the film stuff. What was your kind of faith upbringing during that time? Like, were you always a
Mhm.
strong Christian? Like for me, I was like I got saved when I was 5 when my grandma prayed with me, right? And then from there, I've always been involved in church. I've always been in youth groups. I've always been in young adults groups. I've always been in ministry. And then when I was 19, I got in traditional ministry and like went from there. So I feel like for me, I never had this like extreme moment of like now I'm a Christian. It was just like always a slow build since I was a kid.
Mhm.
For you, how do you feel like that went for you? Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this content and you want to see us making more stuff just like this, then the best way to support us is through snipesupport.com. You can pledge $5, $10, or $25 a month in order to help us to continue making content just like this, regardless of how YouTube treats us or how many people they send it out to. It really, really helps. And on top of that, you actually get to see a lot of our content early, or even extra content that is never going to be on YouTube. There's a lot of stuff over there that is just for our Patreon people, including full live streams that are more than just what you're seeing here on YouTube. So if you're interested in that, we'd love to have you over there. And of course, let's continue on with the video.
Yes, it's very similar. I came to the Lord at a young age, was 5 or 6 in the church with my family. But then from there, it's just been such a growing process. And I feel like, yeah, I honestly never, because I was so obsessed with basketball growing up, I never got into trouble. So I never jumped out and was drinking and partying and all that stuff. I was always the good kid. Now, did I have a really strong relationship with the Lord, even though I was a good kid? No, not always. I didn't. But I stayed away from that because of my obsession with basketball. And then, so one of those first steps where I really deepened my faith was when I felt called into this. When that was the first big one, where it was like, because something I didn't say before either is, it was like missionary week or something that week. I think maybe at the campus too. So everybody's talking missions and all these things, and the Lord made it so abundantly clear to me. He said, and as soon as I like stepped onto the first set, He said, "This is your mission field. This is where you're supposed to be." And I was like, he's like, what? And it was just so obvious to me. And I was like, what better impact do you have than to impact Hollywood and impact movies that everybody watches?
Sure, yeah.
It's not. He's like, I don't need to send you overseas, and I don't need to send you here. It's right here. I need you in Hollywood. And so it was just like so obvious to me. So that was a huge growing point in my faith, where the first time in my life I felt called to something. Because before that was basketball. That was my choice. I always wanted to play basketball. I love basketball. I was obsessed with it. But that was me.
Right.
And this was the first time where the Lord called me to something, and then instantly also gave me the passion for it, which was really cool. And so then, like, the next step of me growing was when I got married. I tell people all the time, when I got married, you realize how selfish you are. And then I realized
Yeah,
that I have
yeah.
to put someone above me. And so before that, it was all about me. I could do whatever I want, but now I have that in front of me. And so getting married really strengthened my faith, helped me to grow. And I have an incredibly strong wife who's just, she's always growing too. And so we've grown together so much. We've been married 16 years now. So it's just a constant, like, she's very good at challenging me and me challenging her, and we're just growing together. And then of course we did 5 years, no kids, and then 5 years, 5 kids, is how it was, just pretty crazy story as well. And so obviously those 5 years, when we did 5 years, 5 kids, that was a lot of growth. Like
Yeah,
I
that's
thought
crazy.
I already thought I was being unselfish when I had a wife. Well, no, when I had 5 kids, and then it was like, okay, now there's no time for me, right? There's no selfish gains there. And then that's where I'm at today. It's just, it is a constant growth. I'm learning every year of just, how to strengthen, my walk with the Lord, and how to die to myself daily, and
Yeah.
glorify Him.
Yeah. So you get kind of implanted in the film life. You get your first role as a first AD, and I want you to explain some of those roles in a bit, because I think a lot of people get confused about
Yeah.
the different
Yeah.
roles in film. But you get your first role as a first AD, and then you kind of jump into more roles from there, and you're getting really good at this point at networking, which I'm sure is a huge thing in the film world as well. I know for me in the YouTube world, it's massive. If I didn't have networking capabilities, I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am today. So, really, really cool to see that. What was that journey like, moving from your first AD position into getting more gigs right after that?
Yeah, so something I didn't talk about before I ever booked that first gig, and the way I got that first movie as a first AD was networking. I have a friend. Shout out to Tori Martin. You can YouTube him. He's an actor, writer, comedian. But the best thing he's at is good at is networking. I call him a networking guru, genius. He teaches classes on it. So I've actually brought him back to. I'm doing a conference in February 1st, January 31st, and February 1st that he's at, and he'll talk about networking. And I've actually had him teach at Trevecca Nazarene University and talk about networking. And so yeah, I've always been big on networking. That was a huge part of my career. So he was a huge reason for me to meet all those people. He's the reason I met Dallas Jenkins. He's the reason I met he's the reason I met the Kendrick brothers. He is like the sole person that introduced me to all these people. Now then of course it's still my job to like do what I'm supposed to do, right? And be good at what I'm supposed to be good at. But networking was has been so vital, and that's what got me to that first gig, and then continuing to do that forward. So yeah, now and I say, like, I go to all. That's why I'm hosting this film festival at the end of January, is for that. I love going back and helping other people connect. Now that I have all the connections, or the connections that I want, um, I love to connect other people. I want to connect young people that are trying to get in the business, or new people that are trying to get in the business. So
Right.
that's definitely part of my heart too, is mentoring the next generation and teaching them how to get plugged into the business and network and things like that, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. So go ahead and explain to us a little bit about these roles. I know, just explain to us the AD team. What are their roles within it? I know you're the first AD, but what does that mean in terms of film? And you have a second AD, but then you have a second AD. Like, what are all these things, and how can we kind of understand them a little bit better?
Yeah, so uh, the person above me, will start there, is like the line producer, the unit production manager, or the line producer. They're the person that kind of puts together the budget and brings out the money and goes, okay, we need to budget all these things for all these different roles, and then they also are usually responsible for crewing up and hiring all the positions, hiring first AD, second AD, and all those other positions, putting them in. So that would be, as me as the first assistant director, that would be my direct boss. So then the first assistant director, which is what I do, then they would pass me the scripts. Sends me the scripts, and I'm the first person that gets them and turns it into a schedule. And so I take the script and go, okay, there's 5 scenes in this house, so I put all those 5 scenes in this house, and then I start spreading it out and go, this is how many days it's going to take, or how long these things are going to take. So I build the schedule. And then once we start filming, it's my job to keep us on that task, to keep us on schedule and on time. Time is money. It's obviously, and there's lots of moving parts, especially with The Chosen. There's over 200 crew members every day, and everybody's doing all the different things. And so I'm the one voice that's trying to keep everybody on task and on point of what we're actually filming. So I'm telling what Dallas wants, and Akis, the cinematographer. I'm communicating to all the other departments what they want and how we're going to do it and how we're going to accomplish it. So a lot of people that walk onto a film set think that I'm the director, just because I'm the one taking charge of everything. But that's Dallas, of course. He's more behind the behind the monitor, watching the actors, and doing the blocking and working with Akis to make sure it's exactly the way he's wanted. I'm handling all the logistics. He's the
You're
creative. I'm
kind
the
of like
logistics,
you're kind
basically.
of like the wedding planner at the wedding. Like, you're keeping the
Hmm.
bride focused on the wedding. That's Dallas, and then you're the wedding
Yeah.
planner, making sure everything's good to go.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So,
So what about
so
the
so
other
that's
members of
my
the
role.
team, like Mitch,
Yeah.
or these other guys that are on there?
Yeah. So then the next one directly under me is the second assistant director, which is actually not Mitch.
Hmm.
The second assistant director is working ahead of me. So they take my schedule, and then they break it down to our daily call sheet, which is like our Bible. It's what we're shooting that day. It gives all the information for every single department, all the actors, everything is all on basically one sheet of paper. The second handles that from day to day, and they're looking at. So they've taken my schedule, because now I have to focus on the day at hand. So they take that and they look a week ahead or the next day. So they're working on the next day, and then they're working on the week ahead and making sure the actors are ready, making sure so and so flew into town and is ready. There's just so many moving parts. They're making sure all that is lined up and ready. And then they also run base camp. So base camp and set are like two different places, used for the most part. So on The Chosen, our set is where we're filming, and in base camp is where all the trailers are, the actors' trailers, the bungalows, all that stuff. The second AD is there making sure all the actors are getting ready on time, they're in the right costumes, they're working with costume, all that stuff, and getting them all together, and then they send them to me on set once they're ready. So they handle them at base, I handle them at set. Now The Chosen is so big, my second AD honestly doesn't handle that. We have a whole nother AD that handles that, which is why it's probably confusing on my whole team on Chosen, because there's lots of ADs because it's
Right,
gotten
right,
so big and we have so many actors. Normally just a second AD would handle that, but I don't have an additional AD that just handles base camp like that. And that's Jordan Roby is the second AD who's been on the Brosen with us for an episode.
right.
So
King
then
Donkey Boy.
yeah, exactly. So then, the second assistant director, which is funny that it's called that. Only in America we call that. In Canada and other places, it's called the third assistant director, which makes sense. But we call it the second for whatever reason. That's my right hand man on set. So that is they're next to me, next to the first assistant director, and helping them. So if there's like with The Chosen, there's always background, but if there's no background, then they are helping communicate. They're helping communicate to other departments. Like if I'm standing next to Dallas Jenkins, for instance, the director, he would be standing next to the DP so that we can communicate what the DP's thinking, what the director's thinking, because they may not be on the same page, or they need to be, or they're really far apart and they need to communicate because they're not sitting together. So he's
Right.
basically is my just right hand man for anything. Now, obviously, on Chosen and lots of other ones, he's he handles background. So he places background. That's his art form, and that's what he does. He places background and puts them where they want. And again, on The Chosen, we have lots of other ADs that are kind of getting them ready, getting them there, and then Mitch handles them once they're on set to then place them and put them in place, which is what the second assistant director does. And so then other additional assistant directors are just those things. They assist in those, like I said, The Chosen. Like we have a background assistant director, so that's what like Sam Jenkins is. That he just handles background at base camp, basically getting them ready, making sure they're in wardrobe, finding out which ones we need to start. If we may have 50 of them, but we only need 15 to start. So bring us those 15. Like he's
Right.
handling all that. Mitch is the one calling out for it on set. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So
So let's jump back and go to you're kind of coming up in the film world. You're getting things all set. You're networking. You're getting to this point where you're becoming a first assistant director, and that's kind of like your niche almost. Like that's what people know you as. Some of the articles that I read about you before say that you were kind of one of the most trusted in that realm, especially during that time. And so, as you're kind of gaining notoriety and growing in your profession, eventually you meet up with some of the most influential voices in the Christian space, which is the Kendrick brothers. Let me know kind of what went on with that. How did you get connected with them? Where were you in your career during that time? And kind of how did that all happen for you?
yeah, what's really cool is I remember um, I remember when I was in LA at the film school, and I just was finishing up film school, and I was going to come back to Tennessee, and I was like, how do I want to get connected? I remember sending Alex Kendrick an email and saying,
Mm,
I want to work on your movie or whatever. And he actually responded and said, we're just doing volunteers at this point. I think they were shooting Fireproof at the time. And so I was finishing up school. But so then I came back, and then I'd seen, so I stayed kind of connected with the Kendrick brothers, or I wasn't connected with them, but trying to get connected with them. I went to all the film conferences and all those things and met them, but they just knew me as, they didn't know me from Adam, right? And so I just see them. But uh, then when they were shooting, what was it before? I was War Room. When they did War Room, they had an assistant director they'd already hired, a first AD. Someone called me. I was connected again somehow. The second AD knew me, and they called me to come second. And I was actually happy, even though at that point I'd already been firsting a lot and had not been really second. Like I said, I didn't really climb up the ranks. Um, but they'd offered me the position, but we had just had a baby like 2 days before, and they were wanting me to come out,
mm,
and so we had just had number 3 or 4, and I had to say no. I prayed about it, and I was like, there's just no way. And I was like, man, there it goes, man. That was my chance to like work with the Kendricks and do it. And
yeah.
I remember being like, I could have been, but then man, God is so good and how he comes around, because that obviously that didn't work out, but they would have maybe only seen me as a second, not as a first assistant director. Um, so then when they came back around to do Overcomer. Oh, that's what it was. So my connection was Justin Tolley. I don't know if you know him. So he's
Mm-mm.
always been their line producer. So he's the guy, like
Okay.
I said, that's right above me that would hire the first AD. And so far, the Kendricks, all their movies they had hired different firsts. They had not found one they liked, and this is like their sixth or seventh movie by the time they did Overcomer.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up doing a movie with Justin that was called Indivisible, and it went really well. Shot at Memphis, Tennessee, and Los Angeles, and or Santa Monica. But anyway, shot it with Justin, and he loved me. I loved him. He was awesome to work with, and I knew he was the Kendricks guy. And so then the next go around when they went to do Overcomer, Justin just was told the Kendricks, they're like, all right, we need a first, and we still haven't found what we like. And Justin's like, Adam's the guy. You got to do Adam. And I got on the phone with Steven and Alex, and it went really well. And they hired me right there on the spot. And so, yeah, it was basically just proving myself on another film, working with their line producer, and then was able to just jump in with them. Which, again, working with the Kendricks is so different than working with anyone else in the film industry,
Right.
um, which is a great thing. Like, because I tell everybody, doing a film with them is like going to church camp. So they're pastors first, and before they're filmmakers, and they'll tell that
Mm-hmm.
to you, and it's so cool because everybody that comes and works on their movies, man, like you just get closer to the Lord more than you're, because every other movie I work on, we're all about making that movie. I mean, it is the
Right.
most important thing, right? Because it's so expensive and it's lots of money and it's all these things, and it's hard to do. So for them to go, no, like this is like your family and your relationship with the Lord is more important than this movie we're making right now, is incredibly powerful and makes their sets amazing, and everybody has a
Mm.
great time and is just so close at the end, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you worked on two movies with them, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So you were on Overcomer and then one more that I can't remember. What was the other one?
It's called Life Mark.
Life Mark. Okay.
Hmm.
So you describe I've heard you say this before in previous interviews as well, that you describe being on set as almost like a church camp where they're pastors first and they're focused on the ministry of it. Did they intentionally hire people on cast and crew that were in the Christian realm? Or I know on the front facing for sure they do. You know, like the main characters of a lot of their films are
Hmm.
high level sort of like Christian influencers or celebrities in a lot of cases. But what was your experience with that kind of stuff there with cast and crew and yeah, I want to get into later how it differs from The Chosen, but for here, kind of what was that like in terms of just the film world?
Yeah. So they, for sure, when they hire cast, especially a lead, somebody that's going to play the lead of their film, they know that they're going to be able to promote the film and they're going to lead. So obviously they have to be on the same page with them and their beliefs, because they can't have an atheist promoting their movie, because then they'll say whatever from the
Right.
when they're, because they have to do all this advertising after the movie, right? So obviously that's very important. For crew, they don't only hire Christians, but what they love to do is take the first like the person that's in the lead, so like the key of each, so the first assistant director of my department, the key grip, or the lead of each department. They want them to be a believer because they want them to be able to shepherd the rest of their team and lead them, and so like basically lead by example. So it's not like a requirement, but that's their goal. They always try to hire their key top people to be believers, and then that way they have influence basically over all the people that work with us that are non-believers.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me for sure. So moving on from Kendrick Brothers, you've done a whole bunch of stuff in the film realm. I mean, like you were saying before, you've done a ton of music videos. You've done a ton of different smaller project commercials. One of which for you won an Emmy, right? That's an interesting thing for
Yeah.
sure. And eventually, you meet Mitch somewhere in this time, right? During that time.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
did you
So
already
I
have a
actually met
connection?
Mitch.
Sorry, go ahead.
I met Mitch on Indivisible. So actually,
Okay.
the movie I was telling you about that I did with Justin, Mitch was, so Mitch and I meeting is a fun story. So Mitch was the accountant on
Okay.
Indivisible. So
Okay.
you may not see it, but Mitch is a numbers guy, even though he's incredibly talented, writer, director, all those things, doing the Promised Land. He's so creatively smart. He's also smart with numbers, which is crazy because I'm not. I'm terrible with numbers. And so, anyways, he was the accountant, but in order to make the housing work, they put us together. So Mitch and I were in the same house
Okay.
during the filming. So that's how I met him, got to know him. And I remember he was still in college, so he was still finishing or his master's degree. So he's like working on these papers, staying up late every night, then having to go to work the next day for 12-hour days. And so him and I were just get to talk a lot.
Mm.
And he told me, he said, I really want to be an AD. He said, I think I'd really like to be an AD. And just getting to know him, I was like, dude, he's got the right personality for it. I love it. And that's been kind of my thing over the years is I've almost Mitch was one of the first ones, but I've almost always hired a green person. Green means they haven't done it before. They haven't
Right.
done, they have no experience. And I'll take somebody that has no experience and train them up the way I want them instead of the person that's already experienced because of of how they handle people. Because there is unfortunately a lot of people in this business, especially not in the faith-based space. They're in the faith-based space too, but of like sometimes ADs just carry themselves very proudly and just very condemning to people that work under them.
Mm.
And so those were the ADs that I wanted nothing to do with. I didn't want them on my team. I didn't want to work for them, and I didn't want them on my team. And Mitch just had that personality when I first met him. I'm going, yeah, you're like me. Like I want to love on people. I want to take care of people and do it with grace and love and still work our butts off. Like and
Right.
so I gave him so right after that movie, the next movie I did, I hired him as the key set PA. So I made him head of all the PAs and which production assistant. Which by the way, we didn't touch on key set earlier. Basically, a key set PA is production assistant is PA. That's the lowest man on the totem pole is the production assistant. You just do what everybody tells you to do. The key set production assistant basically is head of the production assistants to make sure you guys are getting people waters, taking care of these things. When we're filming at a certain location, if we're filming in a room and we need to lock it up so that nobody walks in while we're filming, the key set PA would put those PAs in position and put them at the lockup. So that's Gwendolyn for me on The Chosen. Well, that's what she does is she goes and finds the places of gaps where people might walk onto set or mess up the shot, whether it's crew, cast, or anybody that might come in, and she sets lockups, what we call lockups, and puts a PA in each of those positions, and then comes and confirms it with me and makes sure we're basically locked up so nobody's going to ruin the shot. That's what a
Right.
key set PA does. So, anyways, Mitch did that for me on the first movie we did together, basically. Absolutely killed it. It was wonderful. And so the very next film, I hired him as a second, which was Overcomer, my first one with Kendricks. So
Okay.
it was a very, I had the option to hire a really experienced second for Overcomer or
Right.
Mitch, who hadn't done it
Right.
before, but I loved what he did on the film we did before. And I loved his personality. I was like, we can do it. And Overcomer, for us at the time, now it's not, but at the time was lots of extras, most extras we had seen. And I mean,
Right.
because it was some big, like running all this stuff. So it was lots of extras. And I just remember again praying about it because Mitch was not the obvious choice. Was not the choice that I would pick as a businessman. But I felt led to pick Mitch, and man, obviously we did Overcomer. Right after Overcomer, we did the first 4 episodes of The Chosen. And
Right.
when he did Overcomer, it was unbelievable. He did such a great job, and even back then, the first one he did, and again, a lot of the fans, or a lot of, I'm sorry, the background for Kendrick film are fans too, like The Chosen. So most people
Right.
are there just because they love Kendrick films and they want to help out. And so again, you got to love on them. And so Mitch just did such a great job of loving on them, where they all wanted to come back the next day, and we kept getting more extras instead of you need 50 and
Right.
you only get 20. But
Right.
we needed 50 and we get 75 because they want to come hang out with Mitch again. And so,
Mm.
anyways, that's how his career blossomed with me, of just like, okay, Overcomer with lots of extras. And then boom, we went to Chosen. And then I was like, I never want to work with anybody else ever again. So
That
yeah,
must have been nerve wracking for you, though. Like, obviously, you prayed about it and you felt that it was the right decision, but at that point in your career, like that could have been something that was really looked bad for you. You know, if Mitch
yeah,
did
yeah,
fail, if he didn't do what you thought he was going to do, I'm sure that part of you was nervous about that. No.
for sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. And that's what stuff. I mean, I still, and now with my career being where it's at now, I still get options all the time, do for myself to choose which movie. I have two good choices in front of me, and I don't know which one to take. Right. So I just have
Right.
to. That's the other part that we talked about earlier about faith is my career is where it's at because I've had to rely on the Lord for my faith of like going, where do I go next?
Yeah.
For instance, the Chosen was one of them. I had another film offer when Dallas offered me the first 4 episodes of The Chosen. I had another film offer that was better. Like it was a film company I already worked with and done 2 or 3 movies with. So it was a
Mm.
guaranteed gig. I knew it was going to be good. I knew it was all these things. And then Dallas offers me The Chosen at the same time. And The Chosen was not the obvious choice at the time. Nobody knew what Chosen was. The budget was small. It was just like any other thing I had done. So the only thing that was different for sure that I've always said, where I read the scripts and they blew me away. The scripts were
Mm.
incredible. And I was like, this
Yeah.
is the best. And so, but it wasn't an obvious choice for my career. And it was very much throughout prayer to where the obvious choice as a businessman was the other one. But again, when I prayed about it, it was like Chosen. Well, now I look back on it and go, obviously, like look at where the Chosen is now. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, God has been so good to me and blessed me so much in my career and the path, and it's been the same for the people I pick that work for me. He's been
Yeah.
so gracious to where I'm like praying. It's hard because again, a lot of times I don't have a choice between a good and a bad person. Most of the time, it's a choice between two really good people that are going to work for me.
Right.
And it's the hardest, especially now in the Chosen. Everybody that I want to come work for me is all very good, and I'm like, but I can't say yes to all of them. And there's so many people that want to work on our team,
Right.
and it's hard. So I got to pray about it for sure.
Yeah. That's awesome though. Really, really cool. How did you meet Dallas, and how long have you known him?
Yeah, so Dallas and I met at one of those film conferences. It was pretty cool. So he had just, or he was about to release Resurrection of Gavin Stone, and I had just released, or was about to release, a movie called Heaven Bound, and they're both comedies, both Christian comedies. So they showed back to back at ICVM at a Christian film festival, and Tori Martin, who's a friend of mine, who I made the movie with, I made Heaven Bound with. He had known Dallas for forever. He'd known him for many years. Told me about him, but we never met. So then at that conference, I think it was Heaven Bound was first, and Dallas watched it, and we went. You go up and talk after your film, kind of talk about it and all that stuff. And I remember Dallas being really impressed with it, and he was just like, "That was really funny. I can't believe how well it was for how little budget you had." And so nothing but great things to say about it. And then he showed Resurrection of Gavin Stone, and we got to talk about it. And so, anyways, that's where I met him. Was at that, and it was great. And Tori had introduced me to him and told him that not only was I a producer, or I could produce my own films like that, but I was also a first assistant director. And he said, "Great, I need one." He said, because he had also been all the movies he had done, he'd not used the same person and had not
Okay.
been happy. So, but that was, then a Resurrection of Gavin Stone releases. Obviously, everybody knows. Everybody on here probably knows Dallas's story. His career tanks. He's kind of done. But then when
Yeah.
he comes back, and so when he wrote the scripts, I was one of the first people he called, and just he had stayed connected with me and Tori. I mean, I hadn't really talked to him, but he still knew that I was a first AD. And then I had done a couple. I'd done, of course, since Heaven Bound to when he made Chosen, or when he was about to make Chosen, I had done several more films, so I had that many more films under my belt as an AD,
Right.
and I had started becoming basically like, oh, you want the guy who does Christian films and is good at it,
Mm-hmm.
call Adam. It was basically at that point. So it wasn't just Tori; it was like several people suggesting me to Dallas at that point. So he
Right.
actually called me for The Shepherd, but I was already on Indivisible. I think it was. I was shooting Indivisible, so I couldn't do it. So I wasn't able to do The Shepherd. And then he called me again when after he did The Shepherd and its success and wrote the first 4 episodes.
That's awesome. Were you ever worried about that? I know as a YouTuber, I think we obviously can get worried about like getting stuck into a very specific niche. So like The Chosen for us was that for a long time. Now we're kind of branching out and we're able to talk about some of the projects, which is why I think it's cool that you're kind of in this space. But were you ever worried about kind of getting stuck in that and being the Christian guy, or were you just cool with that the whole time?
Um, I honestly didn't think much about it. I was cool with it, and I never set out to do Christian films. But that's where I got connected with Tori and the conferences I was going to. That's where I got connected, and was really just trying to break into the business in general. And then, as soon as I got in, I was enjoying it and loving it. And so, no, and then I still do, and every once in a while, one of those would just pop in. I still get one of those like random secular films that pop in and go, "Hey,
Right.
we've heard you're great first AD." Because part of the deal is I'm not union, and Chosen's not union. Most secular films are union if they have any kind of budget, and so basically, I get those calls when they have to do a non-union movie. They're like, it's hard to find an AD who has my kind of experience, who's done this many movies, this many shows, that's not part of the union, because the union's so good, pays so well, has all the
Right.
health, pension, and benefits, and I'm still not a part of it. So most people who are at my point in my career are part of the union. So it's hard to find somebody like me because
Yeah.
and I'm in Tennessee, which is a right to work state. It's all complicated, but basically that's why how I get these other films too of secular films like, oh, this one's not union because we're like they're 20 million or 25 million size show and they're like, we need a AD, but he can't be union. And so that's how I end up getting on other non-Christian films.
Interesting. Okay, super super cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you begin The Chosen. You get into the first 4 episodes. You get into the first season. You had a little bit of a discussion about this on the Brosen, which we'll get to in a bit as well. But how was that journey starting in? You mentioned that the scripts were really really good, but besides that, kind of what was your thoughts getting into The Chosen and starting that project?
Yeah, I was honestly a fan from the beginning. So again, I read the scripts, and I've told this story several times online, but it's always worth telling. Is Dallas? I read the 4 scripts. I called Dallas, and I said, "Man, these scripts are really good, but I have to ask, who's playing Jesus?" And he goes, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's a friend of mine." Well, let me tell you, if you're in the business and somebody says that to you, they're always really bad. Like when they're pulling in their friend to come play a big role,
Right.
it's like it's guaranteed they're not a good actor almost all the time. Well, this was,
Yeah.
and so you can imagine I was like, oh man, I thought this was gonna be really good. Dallas just told me his friend's gonna play Jesus. Oh boy, here we go. And obviously, the first time I step on a set and see Jonathan Rumi act as Jesus, I'm like, where'd this guy come from? Are you kidding me? He's incredible. From the very beginning, Jonathan proved, and that was, and so as soon as we started filming, there was so many man, there were so many. I think about how small we were. I mean, it was just Mitch and I, and basically one and two other guys were like our whole team. And I just remember barely remembering those first 4 episodes because we were running ourselves ragged. We were just running crazy just to accomplish, because we still have 20, 30 background. That's a lot for us, 3 or 4 guys. And
Right.
I just remember it went by so fast because we were just running around like chickens with our head cut off. But it was, but I remember being like, man, that was awesome because I remember the actors stepping on a set the first time I saw like Noah James and Shahar and their relationship. I was like, man, these guys are. And again, none of these actors had names. I hadn't seen them in anything. And these guys are so good. So from the very beginning, I for sure saw, okay, I know the script's good. And then once the actors started coming on the set, they were so good. I mean, this has to be good. And I was right.
Yeah. So, okay, this is bringing me down a different track right now, but so what are your thoughts then for projects that maybe don't turn out that way? Like, do you ever get a project that you're on and you've committed to, and then you go through the scripts and stuff, and you're like, I'm not so sure about this one. Like, do you ever have moments like that?
Yes. So what's been amazing is so for the first, from 2010 to probably 20 until Chosen, probably up close to Chosen. I had again. We have a bunch of kids at home. My wife stays home now, so it was yes to everything. I'd read the script and I'm like, this script is terrible, but I have to take the movie because I need a job. So it used to always be a yes, but then I've been so blessed ever since probably the Kendricks and then into Chosen of going, I can say no now to a bad script. And so far, ever since I've been able to say no, and I can say no to, I don't have to take the job. No, there hasn't been any project where I worked on and go, oh no, this isn't what I thought it was. Or I've been very fortunate to go, there's a good script, good people, and for sure, there's been some times where I'm like, oh, that could have turned out better, or I wish that would have been better. But overall, was definitely very happy with it, and so that's been great. So yeah, for sure, at the beginning of my career, I said yes to everything, and I worked on some stuff that I don't promote, I don't share, or I'm like, oh yeah, you should go see this. It's just like, oh well, it was a paid gig basically.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think the one thing that I was really looking forward to talking to you about, I think overall, is the difference between The Chosen and particularly the Kendrick movies, but your other movies in the career that you've had. I think it's really interesting because I've looked at Christian media my whole entire life, but I've never been interested in it basically ever. Even for me, a lot of the Kendrick movies, they just didn't hit for me in the way that I wanted them to. And so The Chosen was the first Christian media project ever that really grabbed me in a way that made me really interested and really brought me into not only the show, but also learning more about the Bible, right? And so that's why I'm so passionate about the show. That's why I'm so like bought into it. But I wonder from your perspective what the difference is, not only from working on them, but just the atmosphere around them between a Kendrick project and The Chosen. What are the differences that you see, I guess?
Yeah, so the Kendricks, another, I told you that they pick Christians to be in their key roles. So if they were union, they couldn't do that, right? Because they would have
Right.
to hire locally the union people. So that, and that's where Chosen is. So Chosen's gotten so big, we have to be union. There's no option to not be union. So therefore, you have to hire the best person for the job that's local. So you can't go, oh
Right.
well, I'm hiring a believer. You have to hire whoever is the best person for that job locally, and then you can extend and go further, somewhere else out of town, and then even that, and then if you can't get that person, then you could technically go non-union, but basically you have to hire the most capable person close by. So
Mm.
that's where the Chosen is so different from what the Kendricks do, and so the Kendricks also won't do SAG, which is the union for the actors. So
Right.
that's why they can have select exactly what they want and all that. But that's also why their pool is more limited. So their acting pool is much more limited because if you
Right.
want to be a professional actor in this business, you basically have to be part of the union. And
Right.
so they have a very limited pool of actors because if they're making a career out of it, they've got to be SAG. And
Mm.
then Chosen is SAG. So then we are going into that pool of all the best actors in the world, and trying to get the best of the best. So that is the difference of basically of what we can and can't do. And then
Right.
of course the difference in set, like I said, I think the Kendricks is just, it's church camp. It's incredible. The Chosen is honestly just more like any of the other sets I've worked on. And I would say it's just like a secular set, except for Dallas is in leadership, who's a believer. A lot of our producers that are in leadership are believers. I'm a believer. So very much, and obviously our content is very much like
Right.
all about Christ. And so that just bleeds over everything, which is great. So it is still very much like a work environment, just like any other film set would be a work environment. Everybody's like just busting their butts and trying to get it done as fast and efficiently as possible and do a good job. But it does have that extra because of the content we're doing, and just because of the people in charge, and because Dallas is a great leader. That there is that little bit extra of like, I don't know, grace, love, that you just feel on set.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think is the best way to describe it.
Super cool. Couple more questions. I would love to hear um if you like what are you most, let me get my thoughts straight here. You've done a lot in your career. You've gone from, learning or getting this kind of uh, idea of what you wanted to do to going to school to do that thing, then going into the career and building up from there. And now you're at a spot where a lot of people would love to be, right? They could see that as the pinnacle of their career. But what do you see coming up in the future for you in terms of your career? Obviously, The Chosen, obviously other projects, but what are you looking forward to as you move forward in your career now?
Yeah, that's a good question because I have so many answers. So there's part of me that is, this is where the Lord has me right now, first ADing, and I've been really connected with Kingdom Story Company, and they're
Mhm.
doing incredible stuff. They did Jesus Revolution and Ordinary Angels, and they're doing awesome stuff, and they
Yep.
really want to work with me. And I want to work with them. And we did Christmas pageant together, sort of. But that was kind of a Dallas movie with them involved.
Right.
And so and then there's lots of other companies that are coming up and happening that want to work with me as a first AD. And so part of me is content in where I'm at as a first AD and just doing what the Lord's called me to do, and loving on people and just trying to lead, die to myself, like we talked about earlier in my relationship with the Lord, die to myself, but lead in that way and help lead other people that way and continue to mentor, which is something I've been able to do at Trevecca and part of my team and stuff like that too, of just kind of teaching and mentoring the next generation, which has been really great. So there's part of me that's like content in that, I want to stay in that, but then I have the career side of me too, that I'm always pushing for and I want more. And so, I mean,
Mhm.
of course, I would love to be directing my own TV show and my own movies and things like that, but I also don't want to get in the way of myself. So I'm open, honestly, to the future. Right now, it's that I'm continuing to first, but I mean, honestly, every movie, every project I do opens up more opportunities. Doing the stuff with Dallas, obviously, when The Chosen is over, he's going to have more shows and movies and all these things coming, and there's probably more opportunities for me to step into a bigger role. but there's
Right.
also the opportunity that he's also content keeping me as his first forever. I mean, he'll tell me, he's like, I want you to first for me forever, but I know you probably don't want to first forever.
Right.
So he's very gracious in that way. And so I really am kind of in that position to where, okay, Lord, where do you want me? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm content. Obviously I can provide for my family and keep doing what I'm doing, but I know what I want, and I want to make my own, and I want to do this stuff. But I'm also okay waiting and going, maybe that's not my time, or maybe that's down the road. So I don't know. It's a good place to be in, you know. So there's definitely lots of things I want to do, and things I want to pursue. With Chosen and Beyond and other stuff. So, and honestly, like for instance, the podcast, which I know you hadn't asked that question yet, but like
Yeah.
that was just kind of a fun little thing that we had always talked about doing. And then it was like, well, let's just try one and see how it goes. We did one
Yeah.
and we had so much fun. And I think you can see it, on screen, but we did one recording and all of us were like, that was a lot of fun. Let's do it again. And so then it was, okay, let's keep going. I never had a desire to necessarily do a podcast, but we've had so much fun doing it. It's like, okay, well, I'm enjoying this right now, especially when I have time off and I'm not working on a film right now. Um, that's been a lot of fun. So I definitely want to keep my options open, as moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into the Brosen as our kind of send off area here. Obviously, you started the Brosen in secret a while ago. You had a lot of
Yeah.
episodes that you guys filmed during season 5, and then kind of getting into. Actually, I think it started before season 5, right before you started filming, right?
Our first recording, I think, was in February or March before we started filming.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So you've had this idea for a long time, and then we got together at a local get together here in Tennessee, and that was super random. And then we started talking a lot during that time. You were mentioning how you're going to launch this channel, and now it's been really interesting to see. And obviously, you're still building it and seeing what it's going to become. But tell me about the Bros and tell me about why you had this idea in the first place, and then maybe what you hope it becomes.
Yeah. So yeah, I touched a little bit on it, but it's so funny how it came about. So we started the Brosen text thread, I think season 2, as early as that, and that was just, and it started out with just Mitch and I, and Ben, and it might have just been the three of us. I can't remember. We started off, and it just kept gradually growing of this text thread where, and Willie was, so it was me, Mitch, Ben, and Willie in the beginning, at the very beginning, because we were all in season 1, and it was just to stay in touch. Like we would have so many texts throughout the day while we're working that shouldn't go in the work text because they're just ridiculous, silly, dumb stuff. So we had to start a
Uh,
separate thread. So originally it was just like a separate thread, and then somehow it became the Brosen because it was, we're bros and Chosen, of course. And so that started many years ago, and then the text just kept to where then in the off season we'd stay in touch and we'd still be sending goofy stuff, but then we started sending real stuff in there too, going like, Willie's like, hey man, I'm really struggling today with my kids, blah blah blah. Can you pray for me? And we pray
mm,
together. So it went from like just silly to like, oh, now it's real stuff where we're praying for each other and loving each other, and the Brosen has become that. Um, and then as guys came along who really worked on all the people that are on the Brosen have worked for me, or do work for me, or have worked for me, and and it's just because you spend so much time together, you end up getting close. And so I
right.
remember, Sam was real young when we started the show, the Chosen, the show. So he didn't actually start working for us until season 3 or 4 or whatever. So I can't remember when we graduated him into the Brosen, but I remember texting the Brosen thread one day a couple years ago and going, guys, listen, Sam's come a long way. Little baby Jenkins, little Nepo baby Jenkins has come a long way. What do you guys think about adding him to the Brosen text thread? And they all gave a thumbs up. And so we literally called him, like FaceTimed him, all of us, and was like, listen, we have some really big news. At this point, he didn't even know what the Brosen was. He didn't even
Right.
know the Brosen text thread existed, I don't think. I was like, Sam, we have some really big news for you. We want to adopt you into the Brosen text thread. And so he like fake cried and everything. We made a big deal about it. We did like a fake ceremony, and it got out of control quick, of course. Um, so anyways, it was always that. And then we had talked about it ever since the text thread, for sure, since Sam had been there, about doing a podcast. Like, it was like,
Mm,
because we'd finish a day of shooting all day, and you're like stressed to the max, so much going on, but then you'd still, and you're ready to go to bed. But for some reason, we'd sit down and talk like in the office, and we'd talk for the next 3 hours because we had so many
mm,
things to download and talk about, and like good and bad, and and funny and crazy, and like, what in the world happened there? How did that happen? Just all those moments. And so we just kept saying, man, we really should do a podcast and keep up with this, because there's so many
Yeah.
crazy stories that we're not always going to remember that just happen on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And so I got to give props to Nepo Baby. Well, now he's Nepo Baby Junior, because he's the Nepo Baby to the Nepo Baby. But now that we've decided, but I got to give him props, because he was the one he kept pushing. He's like, guys, we got to do a podcast. We got to do a podcast. And we were just busy. Mitch is doing Promised Land. We're all doing other stuff. And Sam just kept pushing. Let's do a podcast. Finally, I was like, okay. So then I organized it, got us all together, and like, let's record one day. And so then, like I said, we recorded one time just to try it out, see how it went. And we had so much fun. And it was, and all the memories just started coming back. And it was like, okay, this could be a lot of fun. Let's do this. So we just kept going. We kept recording. And then we're like, well, we should also bring the actors on, because we always have such a good time with them. Like all the actors, we have unique, each one of us have a unique relationship with the actors. So Sam might be really connected with someone, or I might, and Mitch, we're all connected because we get to spend more time with different actors. And so it's fun to bring them on and have them connect, So that's where we're at. And then where's Brosen in the future? Man, I think we've enjoyed it so much. We're definitely going to just keep recording, and we have lots of ideas. We want to go through all the episodes, all the episodes that we've previously done, because we just have a story from each scene, and all kinds of stuff we can talk about. So I see that going in the future, and just doing more. I've actually just recently had a meeting with a marketing company who wants to like help push us out there too. So like that might be something. So anyways, cool. I think. And what's cool is I think even when we, like right now we're not as busy, right? We're in the off season. But what's great is when we are shooting, that's when we can record in person, which is our best, when we're all together. And as long as Dallas doesn't kick us out and we keep taking over his live stream studio, we can record while we're shooting too. You know?
I would love to hear exactly what you're talking about. I think your channel would explode if you did daily recaps at the end of the day, even if it was just like 20-30 minutes at the end of a filming day, and being like, and just doing a short podcast every single day to be like, hey, here's how today went. Here's a funny thing that happened today, obviously without spoilers and stuff, but I think that would be really, really good. I think that could be some really cool insight before everybody turns on Darby and starts to kill him in the chat. Darby is the friend that actually connected me and Adam. So he's trolling. Yes. He's just joking. Yes. Before everybody attacks Darby.
there. Darby, and Darby just did that so he could get on here so we talk about him. That's the only he's trying. Darby's always trying to take my spotlight. But yes, Darby connected Brandon and I. We went to a networking event. It was like, and Brandon was teaching. And again, that was crazy, dude. That was perfect time. Like that was perfect time. I had just so again, we shot the first podcast forever ago, but I'd finally gotten somebody to edit it. Was finally going to go, okay, I'm going to release this and we're going to do YouTube, but I know nothing about YouTube. That week that I was going to start getting ready to launch it on YouTube, I meet you. And I was like, are you kidding me? The guy who knows the Chosen fans more than anyone, who from YouTube, and how are you kidding me? And just like total God thing again. And it was, and you've been so incredible and humble in helping us with that, of just how to even do it. Cause I know nothing about, how to promote on YouTube or do any of that stuff. So that's been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really cool to have, to just walk that path of like God putting people in my way too, of like my second live stream ever is the one that Dallas randomly appeared on and showed up, and called in. And so like for me, it's been a lot of those moments of like being at the perfect place at the perfect time. And I could never have done any of that, and I love how your story mirrors that too. Amazing, man. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the chat right now. We're going to head over to a Q&A section. So definitely leave any questions in there.
Darby.
But, except from Darby,
Except for Darby. He's not allowed to ask questions.
But I appreciate hearing your story, Adam, and it's really, really cool to hear. So thank you so much for sharing that, for sure.